Once there lived two little brothers, Keni and Kullo. Kullo was younger and Keni was older. They had two loving parents who ran a small tailoring shop. Their parents always taught Keni and Kullo how to sew clothes to help them with the small family business. Villagers loved their clothes and always hoped they would be great fashion designers one day. Sewing was their family's talent, bringing in a little money for their small family. Keni and Kullo always played around and loved each other. Kullo had a nickname for Keni. He called him Buba, which Keni hated so much, but their parents and Kullo laughed all the time at the nickname. One Monday morning, Keni and Kullo had to go to school. They bid farewell to their parents, and it felt more emotional than usual, like they didn't want to let go. Their father insisted on taking them to school himself, but midway to the taxi stage, one of his customers came shouting to give him his wife's dress. The customer complained that he had taken too long with his wife's dress and called tailors lazy. Their father bid goodbye to Keni and Kullo and went with the angry customer. Keni and Kullo finally reached the taxi stage. Kullo was still sleepy as they waited. The morning traffic was too much and people were fighting for taxis. Keni held Kullo's hand tightly so they could force their way into the taxi. Suddenly a large man pushed them and Keni lost hold of Kullo's hand for a second. He quickly grabbed Kullo's hand again and they finally entered the taxi. The taxi drove through the traffic, but suddenly a passenger from the back wanted to get out and take a boda, seeing how thick the traffic was. Kullo and a few other passengers moved out so that the passenger could get out. Keni smiled at sleepy Kullo who was waiting outside. The passenger next to Keni asked for the time, and Keni checked his watch and told him. All the passengers finally got back into the taxi, but to Keni's surprise, Kullo wasn't among them. He shouted, asking where his brother was. The passengers said they didn't know. He was standing right there with them. Where did he go? Keni started getting worried. He moved out of the taxi to look for Kullo. The traffic was too much, and Keni had started crying, seeing how serious the situation was. People talked, saying Kullo was standing right there with them. Suddenly the traffic got loose, and the taxi started to move. Keni cried, not seeing Kullo. The taxi finally left him as people were complaining about time. Keni cried, asking people to help him look for his brother. He ran back to their shop and told his parents. They searched for Kullo for months with the neighbors but failed to find him. Keni always blamed himself for his brother's disappearance. His parents comforted him. They lived a sad life from then on. Keni's father eventually passed away from an illness, and Keni remained with his mother. Keni never stopped looking for Kullo. 20 years later, Keni was a big fashion designer in the country. His sewing business with his mom had bloomed, and they were now rich and famous fashion designers. He and his mom missed Kullo and their dad so much and always mourned them. They had finally accepted that Kullo was gone. Keni and his mom had a big show that day and were holding a competition for upcoming designers to compete and join their label. Many competitors came and showcased their designs, but Keni couldn't find the best he was looking for. It was almost closing time, but suddenly a group of models walked on the stage, showcasing their designer clothes. Keni and his mom were shocked. There was something very familiar about these designs. They looked exactly like their family designs. Only someone from their family would design like that. Keni and his mom then announced that the designer was a thief and stealing their family's designs, so they wanted to talk to this designer and sue them. They called upon the designer, but the designer didn't show up. Keni then ran to the backstage with security to get the designer before they disappeared. There the designer was, wearing a scarf around his face, running. Keni and security asked him to stop. Mom arrived too, plus a crowd. Keni pulled off the man's scarf, saying he's finished today. But instead, Keni and his mom were shocked. Tears formed around their eyes. Kullo? Both Keni and his mom called. The crowd gasped. Kullo looked angry with teary eyes. Journalists and people were recording. Kullo was now an adult, but his family would recognize him even in their sleep. Keni and his mom came closer to touch Kullo, still in disbelief, but Kullo angrily stomped off, leaving all of them shocked. Keni and his mom called after him, trying to run after him, but Kullo was fast and disappeared. Keni then asked his personal assistant to look for the address that the designer had put on the application form. They went to find the place, which was in the slum area of the city. They knocked, and a man and woman opened, asking what they wanted. Keni told them they were looking for his brother Kullo. The man and woman told them to go away, as this wasn't the place, but Kullo from inside said to let them in. Keni and his mom were in disbelief, crying and asking Kullo whether it was really him. Kullo cried angrily, asking them why they didn't look for him and why they were so interested in him now. They cried, saying they looked everywhere for him for years. They apologized to Kullo and asked what happened to him. He told them how he accidentally entered another taxi that was going to another place instead of the taxi that was taking them to school. He was sleepy and realized too late when the taxi was already gone, and he didn't know his way back. He lived on the streets for years until this nice couple took him in. He considers them as his real parents. They tried to look for his home but failed. Suddenly, as they were talking, a young woman came in from the bedroom. She looked like a drug addict and mentally unstable, just mumbling. She knelt down before Keni and his mom, looking crazy. But Kullo and his foster parents pulled her away to the bedroom, scolding her. Kullo told them that she's his foster sister and the child of his foster parents. They call her Dragi, saying she's crazy and a drug addict. Keni and his mom persuaded Kullo and told him about his dad's death. They finally made up with Kullo and asked him and his family to return home with them. When they finally returned home, Keni and his mother found Dragi staring at Keni and Kullo's father's photo, crying profusely. They hugged her, wondering why she got so emotional. Kullo found her and scolded her for disturbing Keni and his mother. Keni and mom tried to defend her, but Kullo's foster parents insisted and took Dragi to her room. Kullo apologized, saying he was sorry for Dragi's behavior concerning the nice gentleman and asked if it was his dad. Keni and his mom were a bit shocked, saying Kullo didn't remember him because he was too young by the time he disappeared. They cried together. Keni, mother, and Kullo performed a DNA test, and it indeed proved that it was their Kullo. Kullo was announced the winner of the competition and Keni's new partner. Kullo and his family plus Dragi started blending in. Kullo had now become famous and was holding fashion shows together with Keni. Kullo preferred to sew his designs from his bedroom away from distractions. He never made his designs in other people's presence, so he could concentrate. As they were eating at the dining table, they suddenly heard Kullo's sewing machine making a noise, like someone was sewing using it. Kullo immediately got angry, saying it was Dragi playing with his machine. He went there, shut the door behind him, slapped her and scolded her. Keni and his mother were shocked at Kullo's temper. Dragi cried bitterly. Her parents nervously told Keni and his mom not to worry, as it was nothing. Dragi had the habit of playing around with Kullo's machine and spoiling it. Keni then suggested buying Dragi her own sewing machine, but Dragi's parents refused. They couldn't just give Dragi everything she wanted. They warned them that Dragi could get dangerous at times. Keni told Kullo to quickly finish his designs for the upcoming fashion show and went to work. That night, as Keni returned from work, he found Kullo, his foster parents, and Dragi standing above his mother, who was lying on the floor. Dragi was holding a bloody knife in her hand, shouting and crying. Kullo and his foster parents were crying too. Keni was shocked and ran to his mother, who was lying on the floor in disbelief. He shouted, asking what had happened. Kullo pointed to Dragi, saying she had murdered their mother. Dragi's mother slapped her. Keni was in disbelief, asking why while holding his mother. He immediately called the police and ambulance, which took his mother's body to the hospital for checkup. Keni, Kullo and the foster parents went to the police to question Dragi. Kullo and his foster parents advised Keni to beat up Dragi for what she had done. Keni, still in shock, didn't waste any time. He talked to the police and paid them some money to beat up Dragi until she confessed why she killed his mom. Keni watched as Dragi was beaten by police mercilessly, crying, bleeding and mumbling. Suddenly, Keni received a call from the hospital, telling him that his mother was still alive, unconscious and in ICU. Keni was overjoyed and told everyone. Kullo and his foster parents looked shocked and asked Keni to stay there with Dragi while they attended to their mother. Dragi was now mumbling louder. Kullo and his foster parents left. The policeman beat Dragi one last blow on the head, and out of the blue she shouted, "Buba!" Keni was shocked. "What did you say?" he asked in shock. Dragi repeated the nickname. It was like that blow to her head had reset her mind. Keni asked how she knew that name, which only his brother Kullo knew. But he remembered that Kullo had never called him that since they reunited. The policemen continued beating Dragi, but Keni desperately asked them to stop, asking Dragi how she knew that name. Dragi was now mumbling again, as if trying to look for words. "Mama, Baba." She then fainted before she could say more. Keni was in shock now. He remembered how happy Dragi was when she saw them for the first time, how she cried when she saw his father's photo, how Kullo couldn't remember their father, how Kullo never sewed in front of everyone, and the day he scolded Dragi for sewing. The sound of the sewing machine was professional, like Dragi knew exactly what she was doing. He then got out his phone and called the hospital, asking them not to let anyone into his mother's room, even if it was Kullo. Keni then cut off a piece of Dragi's hair, plus his own, and sent it for a DNA test to a lab, ordering it to be done as soon as possible after paying a bribe. Kullo and his foster parents arrived at the hospital, asking to see his mother, but the security stopped them, saying they were under strict instructions not to allow anyone in. Kullo got angry, saying it was his mother and they should allow him in. He fought with the guards at the hospital, but they refused. Kullo and his foster parents then sensed tension, wondering why they were being stopped. His foster parents then advised him to leave and go pack up because they had been exposed. After some hours of traffic, they reached Keni's house. They packed up everything, jewelry, money, broke open the safe and stole all the money. As they were moving out, Keni arrived with the police, asking who Kullo was, because he is not his brother. Kullo denied at first, saying it's him, his beloved brother. Keni then asked Kullo, "What is my nickname?" But Kullo looked blank, eyes and mouth wide open. He then turned to his foster parents, asking them what Keni's nickname was. Kullo's parents told him not to say anything until they had a lawyer present. Keni then showed them a DNA test that was a 99.99% match with Dragi. Keni then ordered the officers to beat up Kullo and his family, but they were such cowards and confessed immediately. Many years ago, Kullo's foster parents found him lost on the streets and took him in. Kullo always told them about his real family and wanted them to take him back, but they refused. They felt like they had got a free maid to work around the house. They mistreated Kullo a lot while pampering their daughter, Dragi. Years later, they were watching TV and saw Keni. Kullo was so excited and told them that Keni was his brother. They realized this was an opportunity to steal money from Kullo's rich family as payback for the time they took care of him. They then talked to a close friend of theirs who was a surgeon. They told him about the business deal and how they would make a lot of money from this. He later accepted, then performed surgery on Kullo and Dragi, swapping their faces and genders. The real Kullo was now Dragi, and the real Dragi was now Kullo. They kept injecting them with hormones for their new genders. Draghi was in on the plan too and was happy to have Kullo's face so that she would make money. They made sure to drag the real Kullo, who was now Draghi, every day so that he couldn't remember anything. Only his sewing talent remained. She made all the clothes that the fake Kullo presented to Keni. The DNA test came out positive because they took blood from Draghi. The plan succeeded and they were now rich. However, Keni's mother found Draghi sewing all the clothes instead of the one she believed to be Kullo. Seeing Draghi's style, she knew something was wrong and tried to call Keni. But before she could, the fake Kullo stabbed her from behind to silence her. His parents were worried and told him to give the knife to Draghi and accuse her because Keni had already arrived home. They told Keni to beat up Draghi because they wanted her dead so that there would be no witnesses. But thanks to that one blow on the head, Draghi managed to speak. The fake Kullo and his parents then arrived at the hospital to finish off Keni's mother for good, but they were stopped. As they narrated, fake Kullo swiftly took out his pocket knife and destroyed his face so that it wouldn't be given back to the real Kullo. Everyone was shocked. Keni was devastated, but had to deal with the situation at hand. The police arrested fake Kullo and his parents. Keni's mother and Draghi eventually recovered, and Keni took Draghi to a rehab for proper care. Draghi was the real Kullo, having been traumatized and dragged by her foster parents to forget his past. With therapy and support, Draghi began to remember her true identity and slowly recovered. Keni and his mother took Draghi, the real Kullo, home, and they started to rebuild their family bond. They couldn't change what their Kullo was, a woman. They mourned the loss of their father and the time they lost, but focused on the future. Draghi, the real Kullo, had recovered and gradually took her place beside Keni in the fashion business. Together, they continued the family legacy, creating beautiful designs that spoke of their resilience and love. The end. So guys, what do you think of this story? Did you like it? If you like the story, guys, please give a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I post new videos. Stay tuned for the next video, guys. Thank you for watching.